Irene Hsiao, Shear.
Darwin Shear Squire, all of the above.
Jenn Freeman, Ho-Chop, she, her, they, them.
Thank you. Before we dive in, I want to start us off with a land acknowledgement, that the land that we're living on is the ancestral homeland of many Indigenous peoples, the Council of the Three Fires, Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, as well as Sauk, Fox, Miami, Illinois, Kickapoo, Muscogee, Wea, Delaware, Winnebago, Menominee, Meskwaki, and Ho-Chunk peoples, and that this country was founded upon the genocide and violence upon those peoples. And this is also an acknowledgement that a just future looks like returning the ownership and sovereignty of the land to those people. And for us to begin doing that by decolonizing our minds and spaces and working towards that goal, following the leadership of Native people. So, a little intro on this panel. I kind of began questioning just like career in general, kind of from a Gen Z perspective, especially during COVID when it was like seemingly the end of the world, and things were so normal. And I think as somebody of my generation, I think a lot about what the future looks like long term, especially in terms of climate change and like growing fascism in the country, things like that. And what I'm just questioning what I'm even building a career for. And so I wanted to kind of just gather a group of people who I really admire, who are asking questions and doing just brand new things with their career, doing some trailblazing, and just kind of pepper them with questions about their career. Yeah, you can feel free to join us on the stage if you're comfortable. Thank you. Or wherever you Yeah, I'm going to begin with just some questions individually to the artists up here so you can get to know them a little bit. Then we'll do some group questions, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. I also want to emphasize that the people up here are experts on their own experience and are definitely here for the things that they've covered and just all that they've done in their career, but you're also experts on your own experiences and you have something to contribute. So we would love for you to answer some questions during the Q&A as well. Yeah, could I get started by asking Jenn to start with a quote from Bell Hooks? We had a discussion amongst us earlier, and a few people have stumbled upon this quote and hold it here. So I want to start with this definition of queer.
She said, queer not as being about who you're having sex with, that can be a dimension of it, but queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and has to invent and create and find a place to speak and to thrive and to live. As Bell Hooks.
Thank you. And my first question is going to be for Irene. Hi. So Irene, you are a dancer, performance artist, a teacher, an award-winning journalist, a poet, a collaborator with visual art and nature often, and you kind of came into this conversation a little hesitant about the identity of queer, but you noted that you see queerness in your career in not being able to blend in and having to pass and those kinds of things. So my question for you is, what is your career on your own terms? And per the Bell Hooks quote, what are some of the expectations and status quos that you've seen yourself at odds with that you've had to build that thing around?
no idea like what the career is. I think it's something I'm in process of discovering. And I think often by accident and failure, that's how we wind up where we are. Sometimes I've been frustrated by the sense that there has to be this naming or this noun that describes what it is that we do, which is verb. And, you know, so when you're dancing, you're a dancer. When you're writing, you're a writer. But to think of it as a fixed identity seems very stressful and limited to me, especially when many people, well, I found this especially because I also write about dance, that there are a lot of people who just want to say, okay, so, like, we only see this one tiny segment of you, and don't recognize that as being part of a sort of unified whole or a being in process.
Thank you. For Damon, you're next. So you hold a lot of titles also. You are a member of a contemporary dance company, you're a voguer, you're a studio owner, a teacher, you have a bodywork practice, you are a painter, you have random skills like how to treat exposed brick. You're a parent as well. Are all of those things a career? Are they all equal? And are there like pros and cons to holding so many things at once?
So I actually see all of those as a part of me, which is I embody all those in my career. I like to make sure that I don't want it to be like that kind of like reassurance by everybody else, like, oh, this is what you do, and I want people to see the multiple things that I'm able to do and the things that I create the possibilities for. So I don't allow those to be a limit to what I can do, and I'm always in practice of all those things. So those are all a part of me, which is a part of my career, which is my everyday practice.
Thank you all. Erin, you're next. So you are a project-based artist, choreographer, director of the Fly Honeys. You kind of formed a career in DIY space, and you continue to work in self-produced work, even in large-scale productions, which is not always the most financially secure situation to be doing self-produced work all the time. So what are some of the things that you do to supplement that career that you have, and what about making self-produced work makes that worth it?
Well, I've done a lot of things, so I can tell you what I have been doing and also what I am doing. I made my living for a really long time working in restaurants for the better part of 10 years, bartending and waiting tables, doing random gig work, event stuff, go-go dancing. Jenn made a joke about being the cigarette girl at the random party, and like, I'm her, I was her, I am still her at heart. I teach, I have set movement design and choreography on theatrical productions, and also just for commercial work. I work in university, and I also work at the studio level, and a lot of the time I've made money and my living by self-producing community classes, so to try and kind of make an extra buck and keep that a part of my practice as well. So that's, I guess, some of the things that I've done in order to sustain my self-producing career. I guess that felt, self-producing was kind of the only option, but that isn't a bad thing. I think I just found myself more drawn towards spaces with less boundaries, and that worked for me, and was really important in the early exploration of my artistry and my leadership styles, and my culture building styles. And I think a lot of what self-producing has done and continues to do, in its blessings and curses, is it allows for the creative process to expand outside of the studio and into, like I named, culture making, or having a better understanding of what kinds of currencies there are, beyond and including cash. And so I think the greatest benefit to me has just been, I get to control the messaging of the work, and I get to control how people, I'm gonna choose control. I'm gonna choose that for now. There's a better word, someone shout it out if you have it, but I think you know what I mean. But the messaging and everything that kind of goes with a full production that is and is not what happens on stage has been aligned with my own artistic practice and exploration up until this point. Autonomy. Thank you. This is also, I never did anything alone. A lot of people helped. So community and autonomy, yeah.
We will get to that later too. Darling, so you mentioned in our discussion that we had earlier that a lot of what we're talking about with queering career is distancing from ballet and just traditional structures. And you grew up with pretty classical training, but then you've also found yourself in DIY spaces and doing variety shows and working with choreographers and making your own work that's very much not that, and protest that sometimes. And so I'm wondering, your career and spiritual journey, especially as a Black trans person who's pretty much alone in the Chicago scene for a while. Just how you've transitioned from that classical into what you're doing now, and challenges that you still have with those structures.
Hello. Okay, hi. Bonsoir. For me, I haven't necessarily abandoned my classical training. Literally just last night I was looking at something from the Netherlands dance theater. It was the black and white ballet that and so I haven't completely abandoned it, but I've been having conversations with a dance partner that we're working with right now, actually. Her name is Thuli, and she had a very, very rigorous Begonibo training, and so we've been having a lot of conversations of how to use that foundation and then use it as a new foundation for what you're doing, because there's some good fundamentals there. It's really trying to decolonize the body, which is what a lot of that is, which is elevating and highlighting the pelvis, especially being a person of color. There's so much. I remember, some of my friends growing up, they would often be called out by ballet teachers because of their posterior, and it's you can't help that, and that's very frustrating to have to grow up seeing this thing and then wanting to aspiring to be it, and then getting in it
sometimes dance can be that. It's, you know, for people who are not aware of just the rigorous training that you go through, and it's such a, it can be a mindfuck at times. You know, it's like it's more than just the stepping away from the classical world. It's stepping away from this classist mentality, because that's especially proscenium dance. A lot of classical proscenium dance was created to entertain the royals. You know, that's the foundation of ballet. And so then when you start to get into jazz and modern, and those are the things that are stepping away from these restraints and stepping away from these the classism that often sometimes does come with movement. And so for me, I've really been about how to bring everyone together. And thankfully I've like worked with a decent amount of choreographers where we might have not necessarily always seen eye to eye, but the work that they were creating, it was about bringing people together. And so it's that moment of like, how do I take this negative moment and flip it into a positive so that I'm not forever scarred. And there are some things that are like very deep scars. Like it is, I haven't actually taken a ballet class in I don't know how long. And I want to take one, but even when I talk to my friends about it, it's like we're all traumatized because and so it's just like trying to find, you know, it's like, well, what about this teacher? Oh yeah, this teacher's really good. They're very chill and they're, you know, they're very like uplifting. This teacher, they're a little psychotic at times, but like you walk away like you feel stronger, you know. So it's like those, you know. And but that's the thing is like figuring out that balance. Figuring out that balance of like, what do I want to hold on to? I get to pick and choose also what I want to like take with me, because because there is a certain amount of sad to say, there is a certain amount of trauma that does go into the body when you are working with classical forms, and that's across the board because you still have people, you know, at the beginnings of those straightaways that still were even though that they were like trying to be different than what the classical ballet world was, they ended up gatekeeping and turning it into a new type of classical. So I feel like the queering is the constant turning away from the rigid confines that sometimes dance is locked in.
Jenn, so you are a burlesque artist. You have worked in that form for a while and have also gotten more recently into working in burlesque in arts organizations that are not as familiar with that. You're also a writer, I think. And so with working in burlesque and working with new arts organizations, you've had, you know, you've forged your own way in both of those worlds. And you've talked about a lot of queering career for you is pushing against what people have wanted from you. So I'm wondering if you could talk about the labor of doing what you do, because as you were saying in our discussion, being a trailblazer can look easy, but there's a lot of work behind it to do what is right for you.
Yeah, thank you. I guess and this is something I've been thinking about recently. I think when I was just starting out, I think I enjoyed it. Like there was a part of me that found it exhilarating to like go into these spaces that weren't necessarily intended for my art practice and like push them to their limits. And now, as I continue to do it, I feel like extreme responsibility for the work that I'm creating to like care for it and ensure that it's presented with care and attention, the same care and attention that goes into making it. And that labor, I can feel it in my body more now, I think. I can feel, it's like trying to inch a brick wall forward with my body every time I'm walking into a room. And like, it's tiring, it's worrisome because it's starting to weigh on my body. Like I feel like the bounce back is not, it's the splat back now, that's what I call it. Only because like I think we are trained as dancers to like make it look easy. We'll show up in the studio and it's like drilled in us as athletes to like swallow the pain, swallow it and make it look like it feels good. Make it look like you're having a good time. And I wonder what the cost of that is. Like, I wonder what the price of like, I keep thinking about this quote from Audre Lorde, our labor has become more important than our silence. And I wonder what is that silence when I'm like, just making it look easy. Yeah. I also think that just that, as a Black woman, Black queer person, my idols, the people that I love and call upon, they did not have the luxury of having a long life. So, yeah.
Thank you. So for the group, there's something, when we were talking about like kind of a definition of queerness, something Darling said was that anything bringing people together and not vetting us against each other is queer. And you all show up for your communities in such amazing way, in amazing ways, and you're generous artists and rely on community a lot. So I would just love to hear the role of community in your career, especially because, capitalist career is kind of supposed to be like about you building yourself up, and y'all tend to build everybody up so well.
I was just having this conversation earlier today. There's layers, like with like community and like showing up. And I like for me for a long time, I really just was trying to like do my work and go. Like really, I was trying to do my work and go. I wouldn't bow, I wouldn't do it, I would just do my work and go because I was just like, I'm sharing the thing, but it's not about me, like keep it moving. Erin and I had a lot of conversations about this, about, for me it was always the thing of like receiving the applause at the end of it because it's always been a conversation. And so when you're, when society has gone and looked at you and then painted you in this specific way, and then you're trying to find ways to be yourself and also understanding that because of whatever is going on, you've been given a soapbox to stand on, and you're trying to make sure that you're doing and saying the right things because you are aware of the people. If you are aware, some people aren't, but for the folks that are aware of the people that are coming up behind them, and then it becomes this thing of, this work is not just me, this work is like when I'm gone, is the people who came before me to make the space so that I can come in here and do the twirl, because, at one point in time, we wouldn't even be all sitting here together having this conversation. It would be whites only room, it would be a blacks only room, it would be an Asians only room. Like, it was not even, like, community in that way wasn't a thing. So the fact that we're here, while all that stuff is still buzzing around because there's so many people who want to segregate. We're in Chicago, one of the most segregated cities. These are just facts. You know, it's like we're all up here, have been out here trying to just create space for people to be themselves and feel connected to something, because with the pace of how capitalism works, it's constantly selling you this lack. And so as artists, we're coming in and saying, yes, there is some lack, but also too, let's look at what is here. Let's breathe more air into that. And also help people understand that this is about diversity. And so yeah, like that's what it is for me. It's about like uplifting the diversity of all of us. It's about really coming in and embracing people and crying with people and laughing with people and having the full spectrum of feelings, because the whole purpose of art is to evoke the feelings.
Hello. Okay. Want to make sure it's on. Just to piggyback off that a little bit. Usually when I think about the drive of community, I feel like, especially a lot of people can learn from when you're building a community. That's how, not to tie it back into the capitalist practice, but when people feel supported in a community, they're willing to invest in the community, which allows for growth in a business, in any kind of business. So for me, it definitely is about growing my business, but it's also about actually celebrating humanity and letting everybody know that they are a possibility and they have options to be successful in any form. You know, I think if you don't, like we're so used to like this whole competition of like, I'm better than you at this, or I'm gonna, you know, degrade you for this and blah, blah, blah. And then that just belittling everybody, like you make people feel less than, and then they don't feel supported, and you want to always, like whenever I'm teaching, I'm always celebrating my students, regardless if the move that I'm asking them to do isn't at the level I think it should be. They're still being vulnerable with me and allowing me to guide them. So I'm still gonna celebrate the fact that they made an effort in practicing this and doing that and executing it the best way they can for right now. And I think more of that needs to happen throughout, because that's how you build a beautiful network of humans that love and support each other and grow a community, which also in turns grows your investments in a business aspect. So.
I can't say that I have anything like radically different in my own ways from what these folks have shared. I think just I am usually an act first kind of bitch and then just figure out what it is later, you know? So I think that was my approach on building community, which is that there was no actual originally there was no major intentionality in that way. I was just like, I don't want to do this alone. I like dancing with other people. This is very vulnerable and nervous for me. I hope that other people want to come and do this with me too. I'm just going to invite everyone I have ever met to come do this with me. And lots of them did, and it turns out that I wasn't alone in those feelings. So I think for me, what I've kind of learned in that is that community for me is an exchange. I think the language around investment is interesting. that Damon was offering, because it's mutually beneficial. So folks who are in of a community with me show up, and then I show up for them, and then we kind of feed each other in like moving the continuing of the career, if you will, or the field. So I guess I've always sort of looked at building ideas of community or culture around dance as sort of this like sort of sub way of like naming sustainability that isn't related to money in the field, if that is helpful or makes any sense, right? Yeah, and I just grew up in an environment where there's a lot of moving parts all the time, and so I guess I was like shaped as a person as like an all hands on deck kind of mentality, with the assumption that like for better or for worse, folks would help in some way. And so I think I kind of stumbled into how community could be with an audience, not necessarily a dancing group, right? But with also an audience, and kind of the arbitrary nature between audience and an artist and vice versa is by acting first and starting to produce performances that I had no experience doing at all, and remembering that I had forgotten all of the things that needed to happen, and the folks around me helped with that, and moved chairs and moved tables and turned lights on, and then there was this like kind of organic entrance into it, which is that I needed a lot of help to get it done, and I was the one who was willing to do it, and then it was all mutually beneficial. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's like the investment in the individual in service of the collective.
I'll move on to kind of going back to Irene's response to our first question, which is like, what is a career even? And so my question is just, how important are terms like dance maker, artist, etc. to you? And do they feel limiting ever?
They're not very important. Would anyone else like to add?
I mean, that's the thing. It's about time to light up at this point. Our peace pipe, okay, peace pipe. But no, for me, I think that is the constant question, because it's like you are trying to just go and be and do. I've changed my title so many times, and then I've also been like, don't remember my name, like straight up told people, don't remember my name, you don't need to know my name, and then folks are like, well, who is this person now? And they're thinking I'm trying to be all like, who? And I'm like, no, I really don't want you to know who I am, because I'm trying to figure out how to be just a entity in space. If you see, we had a really lovely moment over the summer. I was talking to my sister and we were on a drive, and the house is like super surrounded by forest and moments. And so we went on a drive and I was like, just talking about dancing, and I was like, for me, I love to be, when I'm like really in my zhuzh of dancing, it's like when you stumble across a deer and you're like on a hike and you're just like, oh my goodness, it's a deer. And then, but you don't go up to the deer and be like, hi, what's your name? Like, and I know it's so silly. I know it's so silly, but that's really how I approach it. Is like, I like to be like that. And then it was funny because as we came back to the house, the deer was like walking across the driveway. But that's how I try to be. And because you can't get sucked into the like the title and making a name for yourself, and I know like I'm constantly struggling with that. I feel like we all in some facets are like struggling with like, how do I get back to the thing that inspired me to like go down this path from the jump, and how do I keep up with the momentum that I've caused by going in opposition to all of the stuff that was happening around me, because there wasn't space for me. I had to make my own space, and because I was choosing to make my own space, that just made me stick out. But I wasn't trying to stick out. I wasn't trying to stick out. I was just trying to, for me, I was trying to buy a pair of shoes, or, you know, I was trying to put food on the table, or I was trying to pay rent. You know, it was never the thing of like, oh, this is gonna be the thing that's gonna make bitches know my name. Like, I don't want bitches to know my name. I don't even want bitches to know what I look like. Hi.
Well, I don't know if this is going anywhere, but I'm thinking that like sometimes these like categories of things are like aspirational, or like there's a side that's like, okay, do I get to call myself a dancer yet? It took me a very long time to like years before I would be like, oh, I am a dancer or something. And I feel like there's something wrong about that, because what is it that who's making that decision of who you are, what you are, or why you get to be one or not?
I find it, I enjoy telling people I'm an artist because it elicits a response. Oftentimes, instantly they're like, you're struggling. I feel like there's an insinuation that I'm struggling, like, which, I mean, that's fine. I mean, I think sometimes I'm like, yeah, I am struggling. What you got? You gonna help? But I also like it because I'm like, actually, I'm not struggling at all. Like, the struggle is because you think I'm struggling. I think it's a charming, difficult ass life, but there's something about it that is actually hard as fuck, hard work, but also there's magic in it. Like, there is something beautiful about the fact that I can, you know, go to a dive bar and be amongst a community and see people and also be seen in a way. And there's also, and also be here. But then also tomorrow, like every day is something new and fresh and I don't know, exciting for me. But also, yeah, I think being able to prove the stereotype like wrong is I enjoy that. Yeah. But yeah, everything else like dancer and all that other shit, I'm like, y'all can keep that. But I like just like artist. Period. Leave it there.
Okay, this next question, we can start with panelists, but also I would love to hear from other people in the room. And then we'll also transition to like a Q&A. So if you have questions, raise a hand, let us know, shout it out, and then we'll go back and forth that way. So my question is just what nurtures career generally? What nurtures career? No. What nurtures queerness? What nurtures queerness? I didn't read my notes, y'all. And also the act of queering. What enables and encourages people to question that and affirm a sense of queerness in career, in a classroom, in themselves, etc.
Expansiveness and mutual understanding.
I think sitting with oneself, being willing to sit quietly with oneself and like know yourself down to the core, and then being able to make room for that self in the spaces in which you go, how you make your art. Yeah. Oh, and then in regards to career, I think naming what it looks like, what success looks like for self, like naming it, and then like letting that kind of be your guiding point.
I would say for me, it's holding on to. Sorry. I would say for me, it's holding on to like adolescent innocence. It's very easy to, especially with some of the topics that we're talking about in our work is, heavy stuff of like, I have a piece, Erin came to it, and like the beginning of the piece, the first thing that I talk about was like being molested as a child. And so when you're out here like creating such heavy work, it's like, how do you ground yourself and allow yourself to return to simpler times? And so for me, it's, when I was a child, and it was, video games and juice boxes, and Viet is like, I love a good juice box. Where's the Capri Sun? That's the question. But yeah, it's heavy. Thank you. But yeah, that's the thing. It's like how to, what is my like adult equivalent of that? And sometimes it does mean like I'm about to go home. Like my sister and I, we will like veg out on cartoons, and it's grounding and needed because it helps you tap into. It also does help you tap into the deeper stuff because so many of the cartoons, they are in a way getting the children ready to grow up. So it's like there has to be a little bit of like advanced thinking within certain things. And this is also coming from more of like an Adventure Time or what's the other thing? Steven Universe, like stuff like that. You don't really get too much deep thinking when you're looking at like Looney Tunes. But but sometimes there is. But yeah, I think that's the thing is like when you can have those moments that you can return to an innocence before you knew what you knew about the world, about your career, especially about your career, and able to like step away because there's those moments where you're questioning it. You're constantly questioning it.
I think that speaks to like just the time before you were aware of like people's perception of you, because a lot of what we're talking about is just like you and your care for yourself versus your care about your perception. Anybody else on nurturing queerness up here?
I can do these things because I didn't say anything. No. I would just add combination of curiosity and acceptance of not knowing.
Anybody out there? Any like memories of spaces where you felt were accepting of queerness? ahead. Oh, okay.
Hello, is it working? Hi. I miss Mr. I just want to respond to the question of fostering queerness, because that's an interesting thing, and I think queerness isn't even a thing, because nature is queer. So fostering queerness is just existing as nature, as you are, as things are, as everything is. So fostering queerness is just opening space for realness. Snap, snap, snap.
I'll add something behind the camera. I think I was thinking a lot about this too, since moving to Chicago, I feel like my career has been divided or split between the drag scene here, which I'm still becoming familiar with, and then quote unquote art world. And I feel at times like the question of like nurturing queerness is like I constantly find myself trying to relish in the fact that I feel slippery, and that people like can like if they see my name on something, they might get like a 5-minute lip sync or like a full-blown 30-minute production. And I think the tricky part of all that is to keep myself afloat in all the ways, financially, emotionally. People, especially with performers, abuse of their labor and their time and their work, and often we're underpaid. The club pays better than like a gallery will sometimes, which is like so fucked up, sorry. And so I think it's like, and like I often talk about how like doing work in the club fortifies everything else that I do elsewhere, because it is community, and in like the realest way. Like beyond like an opening where everybody tells you they love your work, but like they haven't even like looked at it really, they haven't like looked at you and seen you. But I guess I was just thinking about that sort of tension between not fitting into a box and relishing in that, but also like finding a way to make that sustainable, because the more I keep waiting for the world to conform to it, I'm realizing that it's never going to. So I don't know, where capitalism sucks, or I don't know, we have to come up with something different.
Keep a mic out there, maybe. So for anybody who needs it. Anybody else want to respond? Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm thinking a lot about authenticity, I guess, or a truth seeking, that like the way that queerness manifests as it relates to career is that I'm constantly striving to create a sense of truth for myself and authenticity. Like, I think as queer people, we are so often, there are obstacles to authenticity, to living who we are, how we want to, etc. So I feel like my career questions are always a manifestation of my self questions, which are how am I being the most authentic and giving myself the most truth, I guess. Yeah, that to me is how queerness manifests.
I keep also thinking about, or asking myself when I'm at these gigs or when I'm performing, or afterwards, I'm like, is this sustainable? I'm like, how, like people are like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, is this sustainable? Like, how long, I also keep asking myself, how long am I going to be able to sustain this? Like, to go back to what Ali was saying about kind of being in between these two worlds, which I think I also very much navigate that nightlife scene, and also the other, whatever the other side of that is, I don't know, gallery spaces or whatever. I don't know, Yeah, because there is this toll that comes from entering these spaces and trying to touch our authentic selves, and it's like sometimes people, institutions, spaces don't know how to care for people who are putting themselves in that space. Like, here I am, I'm showing up as my full self, and they're like, but wait, we have these policies, we have this order that we need to keep. Can you put your authentic self in this box though? Can you? Okay, here's a check for $150. And you gotta be out in 30 minutes. Like, it is, and I keep coming back to the sustainability part too, like, yeah.
And that is, as I was saying a little bit earlier about walking into a room and feeling like you're pushing a brick wall. Sometimes you get that. You get it. It's like you're not expecting to get it, especially when you've been asked to be in the space. That's the thing that really is like a mind fuck. You're just like, wait a minute, you asked me to be here. You had somebody reach out to me to be in this space, and now I'm like met with all of these rules and regulations. And it's like, I wasn't even thinking about doing some of the stuff that y'all were. But now I'm like. and so yeah, and then also too, just the things that people don't, like the things that they'll ask you to do and not know, and they're just like, oh, that'll be, like there's this one commercial, I think for like Southern Comfort whiskey or something like that, and they like have a cup on a record, and it's like going around it, but it's not even stirring, it's just like a visual thing. And one of my lovers, they're a sound engineer and DJ, and they were just like, that is horrible, like why would they go and put this as a like thing? And you think about that like as like a person who's like actually doing the work, and then you have people who are coming in wanting you to come in and do stuff, but then they're not fully aware of what all goes into that. The amount of times Erin and I've had conversations about Fly Honey's related specifically, of where she's like, they asked us to come in and dance on the bar, and it's like, well, how big was the bar? And it's like, it wasn't big enough. Especially, and it's like, you already know what we're doing. It's like, yeah, you know what you're doing. Okay, that was a redundant question. And so, but it's stuff like that. You're like trying to come into space and like do your thing, and then people want to like make you bigger than what you're bringing because of the devil of spectacle. Like spectacle is such a thing, especially being in Chicago and like we're such an interesting like event city, and like we've all had our fair share of the crazy events that we want you to go outside and you're going to be in this dress that's covered in capes and and now you have to be in character for the next like 4 hours, and you're like, okay, get a cake off of me. Oh, no, you're doing great. And then it's like, can I have a big break? No, you can't. Oh, okay. All right, we're good. So it's like, yeah, the question of sustainability is very much a thing of like, especially when you are oscillating between the two, the gig work and the career work. And then the gig work is feeding the career work because of just some of the craziness that like happens during the gigs.
Sorry, just one thing. I know we're close to time. The question of is it sustainable is one I've been asking myself for, years. And and I think the answer is no. It is definitely not sustainable. And yet, we're all still here and we're doing it. So yes, this is what it looks like. That's what I keep saying to myself. This is what, and we can help shift it and change it, but it's just a reminder that like every time I've questioned my career, what I was doing, how I was doing it, and like cried about how painful it was, or like felt on top of the world because things were going well, like that roller coaster will continue. The artists that I know who I think are successful, quote unquote, like they are on those roller coasters too. This is what it is here, is what I think. And so going back to the question earlier, which was what sustains queerness, or maybe it wasn't sustained, it was nurtures. Thank you, exactly. What nurtures queerness? For me, I wanted to jump out of my skin and say, all of you, when I see your work, when I see you showing up the way that you do in all of the spaces that you show up, that nurtures me, which helps me to show up in all the spaces and in the ways that I want to show up. So, which is again the community thing. But all of that is to say, like, you're doing it already. This career, whatever we think, I had ideas about what career might look like. Rude awakenings over and over and over and over again, realizing like, wait, really? This is what it's gonna feel like when I get to this stage. This is what it's gonna feel like when I get to this stage. And the fact of the matter is, yeah. And sometimes it's incredible, and sometimes it is demoralizing. And, you know, I know people in other careers who have kind of the same thing. Maybe they're more stable though, you know, and so that's a choice that I like constantly check myself against. So anyway, all that to say is like, keep doing it, please, because it's not sustainable, and yet here we are, and this is what it looks like.
A lot of things are sticking in the conversation, and wanted to offer a little bit in juxtaposition to Irene saying like, it doesn't matter. Because I find that fascinating from a writer, because I was like, but words matter. So important. I think it's how we use these categories with autonomy. And Jenn, you had talked about defining success for yourself or satisfaction. And I think it's that intersection that in my own work, what's been coming up more is not the idea of sustainability, but how are we cultivating longevity? So, you know, if this is what is satisfying, if this is what gives you joy, and making time for those things, and also what can you let go of, and shedding more of what we thought, you know, being grown up was gonna look like. Because that's also a lot of like societal conditioning too. So back to the question of like nurturing, I think oftentimes finding opportunities to working with artists to give them more power and agency to say like, how do you like to talk about your work? Not saying, so are you this or that, but you know, opening up the expansiveness is my sort of mechanism of care right now.
I'm curious, maybe, I don't know if this is a question or a thought. We'll find out. I would just like push back on the idea that your career, especially your artistic career, has to be the way you make your living. So it's a thought. Yep, that's that. That's what I'd like to share. Knock yourself out.
That was something that I've been thinking about as this panel has gone on, which is just to say, like, if we eliminated, like, I think something that's special about queerness is joy. Joy is connected to queerness for me, and also a kind of future or utopic, like a queer utopia is something that is a goal. So I guess I'm wondering, like, if you took everything away, like if artistic life did not have to be a living, or if we did take capitalism away, like what would queerness, like how would queerness look to you or what would you let go of that you're hanging on to sustain queerness or something? You know what I mean? Like that question of like, does it have to make, it's like a relationship where people are like, you can't have your lover partner be your best friend, your lover, your sex partner, your everything. Like you have to find different things from different people to make things work. And so I think about this all the time, like what am I still doing in my career that is no longer useful to me, that isn't connected to that goal that I've set. So I guess I wonder if queerness was a profession and you were being universally paid for it, what would your career look like?
I feel like that is, I mean, it would be, yeah, just like the whole like landscape across the board would be different because queerness was glorified in indigenous cultures and cultures that were called savage, you know. Queerness was something that was held up by the community, and so the demonization of queerness wouldn't, like that's kind of a big factor of it because it's all stemming from the puritanical society, the puritanical mindset that the United States specifically has been like set up on. And so
we're gonna have to end there because we have to have people get time to get to the next event. But thank you all so much for sharing, for showing up. I love this conversation. I love the tangent on sustainability and I was just thinking about like polyamorous approach to career now, of like what all can be encompassed in that. So yes, thank you. Homework is to question yourself about how you self-identify as what your career is, without anybody's perception. Thank you.